They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Hey Gengar Gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. In today's video, friends, we discuss Target no longer selling Pokemon cards, which is basically the news of the last week. And in today's video, as usual, I wanted to take some time to not only cover the event, but also take some time to explore a couple of things. One, how we got here. Two, where do we go from here? And three, perhaps even justify the title of this video and wax philosophically about how any particular group or subgroup of the hobby has potentially played a role in where we are today. So stick around because there's tons to talk about. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So, as you can see on screen right now, Vice.com was kind enough to be one of the, I don't know, like 50 different news outlets that covered the news that Target would be banning the sale of Pokemon cards. And what's interesting and why I chose this article in particular is because they also go ahead and say that Walmart doesn't have any, which I thought was pretty funny. So here's an interesting phrase that I never thought we'd hear. The Pokemon card crisis deepens after Target decides to stop selling cards entirely. So long story short, last week, rumors began swirling about how Target would stop selling Pokemon cards. We saw tons of people on the interwebs posting a variety of different screenshots or images of Target memos and internal communications, basically saying we're not going to sell Pokemon cards starting Friday, May 14th. And it came as a surprise to many people. But many people also knew that this was kind of the next justifiable step, and part of the reason for this involved several different incidences that happened across the US. Now, we've heard crazy stories before. We've heard distributors getting bribed, getting followed around store to store. We've heard about trackers getting put in people's tailpipes, and then scalpers following them from store to store and just purchasing everything as soon as they put it on store shelves. But I think the straw that broke the camel's back, so to say, was this particular incident involving someone having a gun pulled on them in Wisconsin. Now, this particular incident actually involved sports cards, not Pokemon cards, so it is important to make a very clear distinction about that. But all in all, someone literally had a gun pulled on them over trading cards, and that's something I never thought I'd have to say. So, unfortunately, that's where we're at. People are a little too crazy. For those of you who don't know, sports cards in particular, you can literally take a picture of it and chuck it up on eBay. Chances are it will be purchased pretty quickly. That's just the unfortunate truth of the situation right now, is that while Pokemon cards have a decent margin, something under 100%, I don't think there's any particular item right now that's selling for about 200% or 100% of MSRP. Even, Shining Fates ETBs are like $86 on eBay, which is technically a pretty significant markup, but not, double the price. Problem with sports cards is that the exact opposite is true. This stuff is selling for 2, 3, 4 times MSRP. So if you go to Target and pick some of this stuff up, you can actually flip it for a crap ton of money. And I think that's probably one of the big reasons why it was that deep for someone to literally get a gun and intimidate and menace and try to rob some folks who bought some sports cards. So that's where we're currently at. Now, the article goes on to, kind of outline some other stuff, specifically outlining the kind of situation where, this person went to Target, bought sports cards, was assaulted by 4 men, he pulled a gun to defend himself, and then, here we are now. And so, as of a couple of days ago, Target's new policy is the safety of our guests and our team is our top priority. Out of an abundance of caution, we've decided to temporarily suspend the sale of MLB, NFL, NBA, which are effectively the 3 big sports that are kind of popping right now from the trading card perspective, and Pokemon trading cards within our stores, effective May 14th. Guests can continue to shop for this stuff online at Target.com. The article then also goes on to outline that Walmart is, also kind of in a similar situation, although no one got robbed or was being intimidated and had to pull a gun on them, one of the things that is an issue is that, you know, some Walmarts are now saying, please don't stock these items until further direction from management has been given. And they're saying this specifically to the restockers, so the folks that come and drop off trading cards, MJ Holdings, and the various different resuppliers that go to these stores and independently stock store shelves. So you can see the remainder of the article down below. I will have it linked in the description if you're interested, but with sort of, you know, a good idea of kind of what went on, I now want to talk about, you know, how we got here. Now, here's the thing. I don't blame Target for taking such a drastic action. Many people would say, is it really that deep? And I would say yes, in fact it is. Here's the thing. Target doesn't make their money selling trading cards. They make their money being a retail location that is family friendly and sells a variety of things, including but not limited to groceries, clothing, electronics, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Chances are their trading card revenue is literally like 0.1%, if not less than that, for their total gross revenues over the year. So put it this way, if you're going to have someone die at a Target store over trading cards, it's just not worth the liability, the risk, and the potential reputational damage they may face. Because, you know, Target isn't a private security firm. They're a retail grocery store slash, you know, seller of goods. So there's just no reasonable situation where we can expect them to maintain a security presence and these crazy, you know, mechanisms through which they can manage what people do in their parking lots. It's just impossible. So all things considered, I understand if this is a, you know, if this is a business that is just too risky, most businesses would agree, let's just exit the business, temporarily even, but let's just get out of it right now because there's just too much risk and not enough reward here. And that's probably the main driver behind the decision Target had. Now, although I agree with the overall decision, I do think they could have managed the risk a lot better prior to having someone have to pull a gun on themselves to defend themselves and someone getting assaulted by 4 men in a parking lot at 8:20 a.m. And that's where I fault them. So don't get me wrong. I agree they should stop selling cards temporarily and just let everyone breathe. But I do think they could have managed this better, and they didn't have to end up in the situation they're currently at. Hear me out. When scalpers originally started this whole, you know, let's bum rush Target and clear off store shelves, Target's initial response was, okay, everybody line up at 8 a.m. in the morning, and we all get 3 per item per person, ... What that meant, and here's where I'm saying businesses need to apply better policies and put into place better procedures in order to manage these types of things. Because when you applied that policy, I don't understand what the intended impact was. Now, I've already said this. 8 a.m. Friday morning is not the time that your normal hobby collector is going to be out there. You know who is going to be out there? Scalpers, because scalpers have the time and the energy to be out there. And guess what? Not only were they out there the night before in a tent. And now Target is surprised Pikachu face because they're like, wait, what? You guys lined up the night before? Well, yeah. Like, of course we did. Like, the money is there, and as a scalper, one has the infrastructure and the time and the energy to dedicate to this type because this is literally what they do for a living or as a side hustle. And so they're willing to spend the night outside of Target. But then Target turns around and is like, wait, what? We told you to line up at 8 o'clock and you're here before opening? Sometimes here before opening the night before? Well, that's where I fault Target because I don't see how applying an 8 a.m. policy didn't kind of logically lead them to conclude like, hey, some people may be willing to be outside tomorrow morning and that might be weird for, you know, just regular customers going to buy groceries or whatever. Then, once Target recognized the fact that there was, you know, a real risk to people being willing to stay overnight or hang out in the parking lot overnight and then be there early in the morning to get in line, they then decided it was a 1 per person per item policy. So you just got one thing. We recently covered that in a video as well, and what we saw was that, well, you know, that's not going to help either, because both policies only rewarded people who got there early. The problem is that if you got there early, you got the best stuff. You got the Crobat boxes, the Shining Fates ETBs, the, proverbial whales of the trading card section. On top of that, there's also the fact that you could just work in a team and get a whole bunch of stuff, or go to self-checkout and just enter in multiple different transactions, and as long as you don't get caught, you can still walk away with a ton of stuff. And so even that wasn't effective at managing. You see where I'm going with this? The policies they put into place simply were not effective, and they only motivated the worst types of behavior. And I'm not defending the people who, decided to rob a guy in a parking lot, or any of the really weird people who, go out of their way to do the worst things at Target and at retail locations in order to get cards. Please don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is that their behavior is really just a reflection of the policies that we saw put into place. Because if you tell me line up at 8 a.m., I'm going to think, oh, if I get there at 6, I'll be first in line. That means I can get all the Shining Fates ETBs. And unfortunately, none of us can control the way scalpers and just a regular consumer behaves. And so it's almost a logical step that if you tell people to line up at 8, they're going to want to get there early to get the best stuff. And so it really shouldn't come as a surprise when things continue to escalate and in a weird way continue to decay as a result of, just really bad policies that got put into place. My argument, and I hope this happens in the future, is they use more content-aware policies. So, an example of this. If you watch the previous video that I did about Target now, cutting down how many people could buy, I left a question mark in the thumbnail. I said, it might be a bad policy. Now I'm just flat out calling it a bad policy. Because here's the thing. Someone could walk in there, buy a Shining Fates ETB. The next person can get a single Battle Styles booster. It's just not fair. And the funny part is that Target is willing to entertain the distributor at a certain time of morning. I've heard Targets have security guards. I've heard some Targets have a staff member literally standing by the trading card section at all times. And I've heard other Targets, and I've even witnessed this myself, have the self-checkout able to identify when someone tries to scan 2 of any trading card items and immediately calls for a employee to unlock the terminal and remove one of the items or confiscate it from the customer. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to take a lot of work. It's just going to take some different work to plan out what the different types of Pokemon and sports cards are, and then make policies around the quantity of cards. So you can buy 1 ETB, or you can buy 8 blisters, or you can buy 1 Crobat box and 1 blister, or you can buy 3 3-pack blisters. You see where I'm going with this? The idea is that everybody gets an equitable amount of packs, and honestly, if they're going to go through the effort of coding all this stuff into their point of sale cash registers, I'm pretty sure it's not going to take a lot for them to just edit it slightly and create some more beneficial rules. And the funny part of all is that something like this could definitely help impact the way that scalpers buy, because I admit they're still going to find a way around my rules or my suggested rules, but I do think it will certainly help create equal opportunity for a lot of folks to go out there and just buy some stuff and enjoy the hobby. I think they could have done this in the past, but obviously things have decayed to the point now where I think what they're doing is right. Just stop and chill out. Now, when it comes to the future, I will say their decision does drastically impact the way our hobby will recover. If I'm being honest, the hobby is in a period of recovery right now because we've experienced tons of shortages that have really impacted the majority of people's ability to enjoy the hobby at the rate that they did prior to, I would say, 2020. Now, retail locations no longer having cards is going to be a problem because as much as many of us are struggling to find product, I will say I've seen tons of folks who are able to find product. And so it's been a pretty decent supply, and we've seen the increases in supply through the presence of really well-stocked store shelves. But now we're just not going to see that. Instead, it's going to be online. Now, I think that's going to impact the hobby because a lot of folks who are just doing groceries or, picking something up are no longer going to be able to grab some product when they're in store. Instead, everything's going to need to be online. But that then creates the issue of who is online and who are you competing with? And guess what? Some of the folks you're competing with are scalpers who are going to have bots and are going to be able to dedicate the time, energy, and resources to tracking this stuff. So, while online could be a good way of buying, because I admit most people shop online right now anyway, I do think there's a chance that a lot of people are going to struggle to get stuff. And honestly, I've seen that. If you go on Twitter, the one good thing is that there are tons of bots out there that actually just tell you when stuff is in stock. So not everyone is using bots for evil. Some people are using bots for good. They're going and they're putting out when stuff restocks. And that helps us as hobbyists and collectors because we're finally able to be aware of when things come back in stock, and then if we're quick enough, we can pick some of it up. The other good thing that I've noted about online shopping is that places like the Pokemon Center, Amazon, and GameStop have implemented some pretty good measures. So things like the automatic bot detection, as well as things like purchasing limits that make it incredibly difficult to really kind of destroy the inventory. I really have to applaud Best Buy as well, because Best Buy really knows what they're doing. They implemented a policy where you can only buy 2 blisters. They ship to store, so they're free to you, which means you don't have to worry about paying, $6 in shipping to ship it to home. And on top of everything else, the real benefit is that once you purchase 2, you've met your maximum for the day. So you'd literally have to create another account in order to do so. Now again, scalpers will find a way, I'm sure, but I do have to applaud Best Buy because it makes it really difficult and not as rewarding. Because if you're just buying blisters, do you really need 12 accounts? It seems like a bit much for what is going to effectively be not even one total booster box worth of product. So I do have to applaud them. They know what they're doing, and if more stores implement those types of procedures, I do think there's a possibility that we will see tons of product available online. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about today is, the state of the hobby and what role any one of us plays in it. Here's the truth of the matter. I wish demand wasn't as high as it was in a weird way, because if there wasn't enough demand, there wouldn't be scalpers. But, I would like to think that I'm not really the reason that Target decided not to sell Pokemon cards. I would like to think no regular, reasonable collector, hobbyist, person who enjoys Pokemon is singularly the cause. I would like to think the collective is not the cause. I would like to really blame this on the supply. And here's my thought behind that. In 2016, for anyone who wasn't around, Evolutions came out and Pokemon blew up a little bit. Basically what happened in 2020. The only difference is that immediately after that, Pokemon flooded the market with just a stupid amount of cards. And this was right around the release of Sun and Moon base set. So they just flooded the market, inundated it. And what we saw was that scalpers literally had to leave because they had no benefit to being here. And in a little bit of time, they were able to sort of recover and retract the amount of cards they were printing. But the idea was to print aggressively and really flood the market. And then this way, no matter where you turn, there was product for below MSRP because there was just so much of it. People were still buying it. And then later on in the Sun and Moon era, they began to cut down on the amount of cards that they printed. But by the time that they were cutting down, scalpers had left, demand had normalized, and stores were back to being able to handle the volumes they were seeing both in-store and online. And I think that is the answer to the question of how we deal with this situation. You can say what you want about policies, you can say what you want about limit 2 per person per transaction, but I think the best way of dealing with this is absolutely inundating the market with cards. And now is the time to do it because Chilling Reign is an amazing set. Demand has never been higher. It looks like the end of this year is also going to be great because we're going to not only get the English equivalent of EV Heroes, but there's now a new Rayquaza and Duraludon set that looks super dope. So there's tons of demand, there's tons of great sets coming out, and Pokemon can pump this stuff out into the market and effectively just flood out the scalpers and the nefarious actors who are looking to flip. Will there always be some people who just want to flip cards online because it's fun for them and, it's their way of keeping themselves busy? Yeah, sure. But, we can choose to do business with them. We can choose not to do business with them because there'll always be a market alternative. And I think that is the true reason to blame for the situation we're currently in, but also the reason that we have a very good possibility of returning to normal in the future. If Pokemon continues to print at the volume they are, and we have some pretty good sources saying, hey, Shining Fates is getting printed stupidly high. Like, they're printing, I think, 3 times in May. And then, in addition to that, I can only imagine what they're doing for Chilling Reign. My thoughts and assumption are that sooner or later, we'll just see so much product on the market that no matter what you do, no matter where you go, we'll be able to turn around and buy some stuff. At that point, the only thing is, are distributors going to be willing to lower their prices? And the short answer to that question is yes, because if they're holding out for a higher price, but they're holding on to so much product because no one is buying it, then I think we're in a good position. So that, my friends, is my thoughts on the current situation. It's unfortunate that Target stopped selling cards, but it is what it is, and I totally see from a business perspective why they chose to do so. I do think it greatly impacts the ability in the short run for our hobby to recover, because it will just make things shift to an online marketplace type of scenario. But in the grand scheme of things, I also know that that's very important for everyone's safety, and hopefully with some really good online policies, which are hopefully easier to enforce because it's all through the rule-based systems of a computer system, I do think there's a strong possibility that it will create more equal opportunity for folks to buy cards. And then in the long run, if Pokemon continues to print cards at the rate they are, the increased availability of cards will usher in an era where Pokemon cards return to store shelves, very much like the era we saw at the end of 2016 after the Evolutions craze had occurred. But with that said, friends, thanks again for checking out another video. If you enjoyed today's video and you liked today's content, feel free to leave a like down below. And if you are a fan of Target's new policy, feel free to let me know down below. Strike up some conversation, and I'd love to see what you have to say. Like I said, I think it's interesting, and I think it was needed. I just hope we get back to normal sooner rather than later. Other than that, as always, thank you again for your viewership. You could have been anywhere on the internet, but you chose to spend some time with me, and that means the world. As always, I hope you guys are having an amazing day, and we'll talk soon. Peace.